District360.
Hi, Catherine.
And we are going to be talking about measuring and reporting today. Some housekeeping things before we dive in. Please silence your phones. Make sure to take the survey afterwards so we know if we were good or not. Hopefully you will already be using the app so you can get around wherever you need to go. Okay, to our session. So in my role and my organization's role, we're technology partners with many downtown districts all across the country. And as part of that, we talk to you folks every day. And a lot of times we are asked, how are they doing it in Times Square? How are they doing it in downtown DC? And a lot of folks, there's not really a set of metrics that IDA has defined of, what are the key metrics for an organization? What should we be measuring? What should we be tracking? But we get that question all the time. And we work with a lot of great organizations who are doing really valuable data collection. And then of course, the next step of that is reporting out, right? So you're reporting to stakeholders, you're reporting to your board members, you're reporting to property owners. So what I thought would be valuable for you all today was to invite 3 of the organizations that we work with who do reporting really well. And in preparing for this session, we asked them a lot of different questions. How often do you report? What's your medium? What's your audience? What are your key metrics? So I'm not going to take any more of your time. I'm going to let them speak for their organizations. But I did want to highlight that at the end of this PowerPoint and at our booth, we have consolidated their key metrics, things that they are tracking, in a handout that you can take with you, and then some examples of dashboards that they're using within their organizations to keep a pulse on all of their data and what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our first panelist, Scott from downtown Dallas.
Scott Goldstein with Downtown Dallas Inc. I oversee external affairs and media relations, communications, marketing, all that good stuff. And Kate's reminded us several times that this is not supposed to be a commercial for District360 and Cube 84, but for our organization, the platform has really greatly transformed and enhanced the way we do reporting. When I got to DDI about 3-ish years ago, we were doing monthly reports to our board and City Hall. I guess I should back up and talk about DDI. We're the main downtown data, we call them PIDs in Texas. As you can see, $12 million annual budget, about 267 blocks, and we do clean, security, homeless outreach, and ambassadors. Ambassadors for us are just like customer service reps that are going around the town and telling folks how to get places, what kinds of events are going on, and whatnot. We got about 100 staff overall. But as I was saying, when I first got to DEI, we were doing these reports that were basically just like Word documents, text updates every month. No real context over time. It was just like what we did the last month, what we were doing the next month. There really wasn't a lot of value in explaining what we were doing and where the trends were. And the data was really siloed, as I'm sure it is in a lot of organizations. And so we had already engaged with 360 at that time. We were really just using it to kind of track all our assessed values, all our properties, but we weren't using it in any kind of comprehensive way across other departments in our organization. And so the biggest thing we did this year was we worked with 360 to develop a custom-built app for our field operations team members that they use to track their data, whereas before we had it in TrackTick and it was really only accessible to the field operations team. Nobody else across the organization could see in real time what we were tracking. We felt like it was really important to integrate that data first and foremost into a system that the rest of the organization could see. And then this year, right around the same time that we were doing that, our CEO, our president and CEO, Jennifer Strix, formed a committee within the organization to just figure out how best to maximize our use of data and use it to tell our story. And so one of the first things we did was what you see here. We just put to paper all the platforms we use, and this isn't even all of them. So this is just the most recognizable ones that many of you probably use. So as you can see, it kind of runs the gamut across all different buckets. But these are all the platforms that are either already integrated into our Salesforce 360 system or that we hope to integrate at some point and that we use to report out our metrics. And for me, the data I'm quoting a former Dallas police chief who would always say that the information that they held in the police department didn't belong to them. It belongs to the people that you're serving. And so that's part of the philosophy, is like, this data is not ours to keep to ourselves. It's really, it belongs to the people that we're serving, that are paying for our services. And so there's no reason for us to be like hoarding it or be embarrassed about what it might say. In fact, I found that the more transparent we are with it, the more appreciation we get, because people don't really blame us for the challenges that we have downtown. They greatly appreciate that our folks are out there, interacting with people that are causing problems, and they're out there picking up poop and asking people to stop smoking in the parks. And our homeless outreach team does incredible work trying to connect folks with housing. So it's really been a positive for us to be more transparent with our data. This is some of the key metrics. Again, this is a lot, and it's not necessarily everything that we report every single month. It could be less than this, but these are some of the key stuff that we also thought that would resonate with other like-minded groups. The next couple slides are just examples of what we see and what our preferred dashboards are when we log into the 360 system. But what I'm most excited about is that we're working with the Cube 84 folks right now to build out, this is only seen internally right now, but we're building out a platform that could be seen hopefully in real time by our board members, so that it's not just the static monthly reports that they're accustomed to getting from us. So we can sort by the different teams and by the different categories. And again, it's been huge value for people across the organization to really understand what we're doing on a day-by-day basis. And then as far as the actual monthly reports that we generate now, it's really a combination of the 360 platform and Canva, which is a fun toy. I'm sure many of you use it. But we've created a platform, as you see here, where we can capture both historical data from month by month, and then year over year. We're building out, our data goes back to 2022 and all the way through 2023 right now in the system. And then it's still important to tell like the narrative story, obviously. So always leaving room for narrative updates. And I mean, we may not get a lot of feedback on a month-by-month basis on what we send, but it's only a matter of time before something comes up. All these reports are publicly available and available to all our board members. So I always tell folks, kind of stating the obvious, but there's nothing more important than what we're presenting to our bosses' bosses and the people that are, again, paying for our services. So this is something that I take as one of the most serious communications we put out on a regular basis, and that everybody else needs to take it just as seriously. So that's kind of high level. The other thing I would say is, for us, we're undergoing kind of an internal strategic plan right now, overhaul, and the data is really feeding into that in a way of, like, for example, we've started to really lean in on a sponsorship program for our events, something we really hadn't done in the past. And again, like, just harping on the fact that the data of how many people come to the events, where they're coming from, the gathering their information when they attend, it's of great value and has been really helpful in us proving up the value of paying for sponsorships for our organization. So it's really, we're at a time at DDI where it's transformed the way we work, and it's feeding into kind of what we do and the decisions we make every day. So that's incredibly important to everyone in the organization. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Regina.
All right, you can hear me, right? I'm Regina Fojas, Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff at the Times Square Alliance. We are, fun fact, 0.1% of the city's land mass, but contributes to 15% of the city's economic output. So we're small, but we are mighty. And we'll talk about some of the important metrics that we track as an organization. So to set the scene here, the next two slides are going to show what metrics we track, very similar to what Scott brought up, and then the data sources that we use to tell the story of Times Square's health. So obviously the 360, but we also purchase data from Visa, we use CoStar and Comstat, as well as Springboard, which I recognize are all very pay-to-play situations, and I know that we have the budget to do that, but I would also recommend to see what is free and readily available in your city. So for example, crime stats from the NYPD, theater or performance metrics from the Broadway League, 311, which is our non-emergency call line, as well as New York City Fairs and Conventions, all have free data that we often use. So I really, to emphasize what I think is an ongoing theme here, is investment in reporting in data is so impactful to advocate for changes and resources in your respective neighborhoods. This report shows what we have done historically. So the monthly economic indicators report brings together data from mainly 3 sources: the Broadway League, ComStat, and STR, which tracks hotel performance. Initially, over 15 years ago, a lot of this information was only shared with our board members, and our policy planning and research team thought, what can we share with our stakeholders? And at the time, the audience was the commercial real estate industry. But we're open to change and know that there's always room for improvement. So we're always thinking about who else would be interested in this information. And this also shows our pedestrian counts. We've been working with Springboard for, I think, a little over 10 years. Our cameras are located within the bow tie, which for those who may not know is the cross section between Broadway and 7th Avenue, between 42nd and 48th Street. And I'd say on an average daily basis, we have 300,000 people come through Times Square. And we've definitely reached pre-pandemic numbers and even have gone over, which is a really great sign of our recovery. Okay, so I talked about what we've done in the past and what has brought us to this dashboard. So I would identify 3 challenges: the pandemic, the fact that our operations data wasn't integrated into Salesforce, and that just the realization that there's not a perfect solution to reporting. So why the pandemic? When businesses were shut down, maybe 13% of our storefronts were closed during the pandemic. And a lot of our stakeholders were asking for what's open and what's closed. And that's something we didn't specifically track, and this was at a storefront level. So we started to do that. And we brought on the District360 team to integrate our conditions tracking. So graffiti, piles of trash, unhoused individuals, they all started to live in the same place, which I think is really important when you're trying to tell a streamlined story. On the right-hand side of this screen, you're gonna see just a panel of links. There's nothing fancy there. But the reason I'm calling it out is, again, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but we kind of wanted a command center to have people access sources that they couldn't meet on a daily basis, whether it's our org chart, our district boundaries, figuring out if the new pizza place is actually in our district or not. I often use that. So every day when I open my Outlook, I also open in Salesforce. It's a little bit of probably an exaggeration to say mission control, but I like to think of it that way. And then when we brought in the operations integration, I think that's been really helpful to get off of platforms that we didn't need and was an additional expense. We, like Scott, worked to do an app for our public safety officers and our sanitation staff to track all the conditions outside on the ground. We also divide our district up into 4 zones to help triage how to address conditions. And then we have a 24-hour dispatch. So there are certain conditions that we can't address ourselves, and recognize that, and they may need to be escalated to a city agency. So that's where we also track 311 calls that are made by our staff. So after revamping our Salesforce instance, we came up with the weekly economic development and operations report. I'd say it's like a snippet of what you saw in the monthly economic indicator, but then marries in some of our public space conditions and the opening and closing rates of our storefront businesses. And this report is available externally on our website. And whether or not our stakeholders ask for it, we provide it because we're the bid, and this information is just as much ours as it is our stakeholders.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Horne. Great to see so many people interested in data after lunch. That's surprising, but great to see because this isn't some of like the great projects we saw in the awards earlier today. It's the nuts and bolts of what makes an organization work and work effectively. And without this data, without this kind of reporting, those projects don't exist, and the bids themselves struggle. You see a little bit about our district. I'm with the Union Square Alliance, not to be confused with the New York Union Square. We're in San Francisco, California. And yes, I'm not wearing a bulletproof vest, if anyone's asking. And we are open for business. We're about 27 blocks. We have an annual budget of it's gonna be over 10 million this year. About 7 million of that is assessments. The rest is, we're getting a lot of city funding right now for placemaking grants and other things in the city to help with our economic recovery. We do a lot of different services, just like many of you do. I did want to talk a little bit before I go forward about our journey with data, because I think it's important to understand that it took a long time to get to what some of the things you're going to see here, and it's continuing to evolve. When I started with the organization in 2010, 13 years ago, there was 2 staff and myself as a half-time contractor. I'm an accountant by trade, and they had 2 separate computers, and they gave me a computer, and we weren't tied together, and we weren't using a cloud, and we didn't have a server, and I said, well, how do we contact people? How are we doing that? And we had an old database from the previous administration. We had Excel spreadsheets. We had Outlook contacts. And so eventually we said, well, we gotta get this straightened out, and we migrated to Salesforce, and that was around 2011, 2012. And basically it was really to have a phone book that was effectively to be able to contact our members and our stakeholders, and it's complicated with property ownership and property managers and the tenants that we actually serve on a day-to-day basis. From there, we use it for website integration. We started tracking different things. In 2020, we partnered with Q84 and built and modified our operations into our Salesforce database so that we could track services to individual parcel levels. And I'll explain why that's important to us in a moment. These are important metrics for us, just like, again, many of you. Some of these we're required to report by our city contract. We have a pretty robust city contract, and we have to do a lot of different metrics that we have to report on. Some are for the benefit, of course, for our membership and owners, and for just to show them what we're doing with all the money that we're spending. Other data that we're tracking now. So 5 years ago when we wrote the management plan for the district, we did not do anything having to do with economic recovery or economic development. We had about a 3 to 5% vacancy rate. That the vacancy rate is now about 30%. And so we are doing economic development. So we started tracking various things from various sources. Pedestrian counts, we work with Springboard as well. Public transit, BART is in our district as an exit, and with their hotel occupancy, of course, ADR, garage vacancy rates, sales tax receipts. So like Times Square, we represent about 0.5% of the area of San Francisco. We contribute about 12 or 13% of the tax base to San Francisco. And worker occupancy and SFO air traffic, how many people are coming actually to the city via the airport. We've developed dashboards, service dashboards, very similar to what you've seen earlier, with different metrics, different things that we're doing. We do a lot of services. We do 24/7 operation. We have a security point system, and folks on the street, ambassadors, hospitality, as well as safety, tend to be police officers and other things. So we track all these metrics. We develop a monthly ops report. That's with our partner Block by Block. We track it. We highlight some of the statistics, some of the things we're actually doing, our security team as well, and their metrics, and before and after photos, which is everyone's favorite, and then various other initiatives. We do have the annual report. This is required by the city, this is required by state law, and required by the city of San Francisco in our contract. We have to, again, met certain metrics we must report so they can measure us over time, and make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We distribute this to our membership and all property owners as well as stakeholders. Favorite report. So, getting back to why it's important to track the services to the individual parcels. In between 2017 and 2019, we renewed the organization and we increased the budget 60% for assessments. Thankfully, that was 2019. That would have been 2020. I probably wouldn't be standing in front of you today. But they've been very supportive. Our board has, and you know, we were a little nervous in 2020. Do they want to change the assessments? Do they want to rethink things? They didn't. They actually increased them. So we've been very fortunate to have that. My favorite report is one in which we have a lot of institutional investors that hold properties. It's hard to figure. It was very hard to figure out in the renewal process who owns what, their LLCs, their individual corporations. So we by literally picking up the phone, calling people, emailing people, going door to door in some cases, we put together a roll-up report that consolidates the ownership of parcels to the individual owners. And then we can track the metrics to that individual property. And this is not only good for the renewal process, which will be hugely beneficial to me. I block by block was able to guesstimate things when we did the renewal. But now when we have new members in the district, which happens pretty regularly these days, the first thing usually out of their mouth is, I don't see your service. I don't think I'm getting any services. I have 500 security cameras, so I can show them pictures of security people providing services at their property. Sometimes I have security cameras on their property that they're unaware of. But this is again, I can take the data, the actual data of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis and show them this is what we've done, this is what we did yesterday, this is what we did the week before, this is what we did the last year. Some of the tech we use, Salesforce, of course, District360 has been a fantastic tool for us. We are continuing. Our wish list is bigger than what I'm able to afford on an annual basis. But we tick off what we can do, and we're continuously evolving this and improving it. Springboard, Vigilon is our security camera provider. Vista team, economic development work. We're having virtual tours of our district so that people are interested in doing business there and or interested in properties or developing them, can check out the district or visitors. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we have a lot of time for questions if anybody has questions for our presenters.
I can speak. I mean,
Yeah.
the room's small enough, right? Thank you. Great information. I'm curious, and all of you can answer if you have an answer. I'm curious to know, once you have all this data, what is a significant or recent decision that it has helped you to make?
I think for us, one example is downtown Dallas has developed 4 new parks in the last 5 years. Turned a whole bunch of parking lots into green space, and so looking at all the park traffic and the we use Placer, not Springboard, but really breaking down month by month the traffic we're getting at different parks is helping to inform which parks we're going to focus on programming the most. So before we had Placer, we were having our field ops people count by hand, like the people they saw in parks every hour. That was not a good way to do it. So I think the speed you might have mentioned that's just one example of us being able to really drill down on what parks we should devote most of our attention to.
I'd say garbage. Times Square collects a lot of trash, and we have a really hard-working sanitation team. And during the pandemic, there was a cutback in the Department of Sanitation's pickup services, and we probably cart away 99% of our garbage. And with the uptick of the number of bags that were on our streets, it gave us the opportunity to take advantage of the Clean Curbs Initiative, which is a pilot program in New York City to containerize garbage. In fact, we think we were the first bid to invest in 7 of these. They're really pretty dumpsters. And we also have the opportunity to brand them. I have some really talented colleagues here who've helped me design and bring this forward. And so it's brought garbage off of our streets and into containers. Don't talk to me about garbage juice, it's still a challenge. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'd say we use it for hotspot, we understand where we're providing extra services, what can we do proactively to try to preempt those calls in particular, or incidents. For example, we have one block of Market Street, San Francisco, which is our main business thoroughfare that runs through the city, and so it's very challenging, huge 30-foot sidewalk. And so we knew anecdotally, like, we gotta do more on Market Street and Powell, and we used data to see what the real metrics were on there, and then we went out and fundraised for additional money for pressure washing. So we do that sidewalk once a week. We need it about every other day, if not daily. So we were able to fundraise additional money to help add on additional services for that area. We also used the metrics for Springboard and other metrics to tell the story of Union Square. Now, we tell that story starting in April 2020, going forward, because going before that it was a different, time frame. I mean, what I would say to people is, well, what's different? We could talk about what happened after World War II too, but it's not today. So we measure from 2020 forward, and it tells a good story. We get, this year, for example, 2023, we're 25% up over foot traffic over 2022. Would I like it to be higher? Sure, but 25% growth is great, and it's a good story to tell. And we see about 50, 60,000 people a week on Powell Street, and it's grown quite a bit since 2021. So that's what we use that data for too.
Thank you.
Data that we report is only as good as the data that we are collecting. So how do you, shall we say, encourage your staff to collect and report this data back to a great tool like this?
Challenge. Before the Alliance, I did instructional technology, and getting people to adopt something that they don't realize is important to them is challenging. And so I think there's always going to be a little bit of hand-holding to basically convince your staff members to use it. But like you said, we're only good as the data that we put in. I've spent a lot of time, my colleagues have spent a lot of time making the case to the departments that we need, that need to use the system, and that's just some ongoing, right? And I think when I thought about what are some key takeaways to share with you all, it's our data journey is like an onion, it's full of layers, and I think you just build upon it, still make our data flavorful, but also be open to change and improving.
I have a suggestion and answer for both. An SMS handler. That's how we get people to collect data. We use something called Twilio. We build it in the back end of our platform. It text messages our employee on their way to work or during their shift, and then they have a link to the reporting form. It has helped quite a lot with data collection.
Yeah, I was just saying for downtown Dallas, we have to do monthly reports for our board members every month. So, I mean, there's a deadline on everybody's calendar of inputting certain data, and then field ops. Like I said, they previously used TrackTick, so they were already used to inputting everything they do, every activity they do, including photos of every incident they handle. So it was already ingrained in the culture for our field ops folks. It was just, we worked with Q84 to build out a new app to do it, to be feed into Salesforce. But it's definitely still a work in progress. The one thing that we are still working on is sort of ingraining it in corporate culture to use Salesforce to track all of our interactions with our stakeholders. So, but at this time in our organization, with our strategic plan development going on, and our CEO and our board kind of harping on this from the top down, we're getting there. I think we're getting better, every month. And but yeah, it's definitely it's definitely still a work in progress to get folks to sign in like Regina does first thing in the morning and utilize the platform.
Yeah, I echo all those things. It's a challenge. For the ops team, we have one of the reports we got Q84 to do for us is to give us daily report on who is putting in statistics or not for the different field ops folks. So that's a way to have quality control there. It varies greatly. I'll be frank. For the administrative team, the management team, they also set up an email, so I get an email once a week letting me know when's the last time people logged on, so I can check that. I try to lead by example. I try to show them that keeping up just with who the property owner contacts is a challenge in its own, right? So, we are trying constantly have property managers evolving, property manager firms evolving, owners evolving, new store managers, et cetera, et cetera. And so just keeping up with that is a challenge, and we try to get our team to understand that and try to work with it as best we can. At any one time, I'm sure there's 10 to, 20% of the contacts in there that are old, and nobody, when they're new manager of a department store, Neiman Marcus is looking the first thing out of their things. I'm gonna call Union Square and let them know who I am. I wish it was like that, but it usually it's down the road about 6 months. So it's a constant challenge.
So I know that clean and save are one of the stats that our ratepayers want to see and our stakeholders want to see. That's really important. It's super timely. But as we're thinking about like culture and placemaking, arts, community, welcoming, belonging, what kind of metrics are you tracking and how are you tracking them?
We've customized our platform so that we track our advertising and sponsorship money. So 20% of our budget is non-assessment revenue, and that was tracked in an Excel sheet before this, and so now it's part of one of the little widgets on our dashboard, right? So that's one thing. And then we also keep track of how the plazas in Times Square are permitted, not just by us producing events, but external parties. And that gives us a snapshot of how often are the plazas being used by other people or by other external parties. What are they for? Are they just corporate activations? Are they events for the public good? And I think knowing that landscape also helps us plan what we do as an organization in terms of what we host on the plazas.
Ours is similar. We manage the permitting for the parks in downtown Dallas. So, and this data actually, we have it, but it's not integrated into Salesforce yet. It's on the list. But yeah, just tracking both inquiries for potential permits and permit events that the city has outsourced the permitting process to BDI. And so what those events are, what kind of revenue they brought in, what the attendance was, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, it's in development to say to some extent, but we track for individual events that we do. We don't permit parks, but we are doing a summer concert series in Union Square Plaza, and we track vendor sales, we track pedestrian traffic. We had a holiday market. We set up the springboard special sensors as well as cameras to track individual activity at that market. What were people doing? How long were they there? What were they up to? How many people came through it? How many people stayed? That type of thing. But it's a good question, and it's hard to tell in a district like Union Square because there's a lot of people coming in all the time for different things and different reasons, citywide events, etc. So it's hard to tell. We have a lot of hotels in our district, so it's tough to always be able to tell exactly why people are there. Surveys, help obviously as well. So that's kind of some of the things we're still developing on.
Tracking, because we report many of the same things either in our annual report, right, which is more around accountability, or then state of downtown report, which is more your economic report. Do you all have any good sources more for reporting on workforce and talent? I just find BLS data to be hard to navigate and be behind on things. Or if anyone in the room has a good source, because that's like always the one section when we do our state of downtown report. I got all the stuff from CoStar, I got all the stuff from Placer. I know about return to office because of Placer, but measuring talent and workforce numbers as well as industries represented in the workforce? Anyone have a good source for that?
We use the state comptroller report, so I'd see if anything at the state or city level publishes anything on a semi-regular basis, and then occasionally if we have the budget for it, we'll do a one-time report on the economic impact of Times Square and get those nuggets of 60% of our workers in Times Square actually live in the outer boroughs. I think that's what you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I would say that I did attend the basics of economic development session yesterday, and she was showing some of the ways she accumulated data, and I think she was using the census data for a lot of that job stuff, but I haven't personally looked at it.
Yeah, total number of employees, commute patterns, and industries, right? And, X% are professional, X% are hospitality. But at least in a timely manner, trying to find that information.
The census does it yearly. It's called a CBS. It stands for County Business
Yeah,
Patterns.
exactly.
It's by zip code,
Yeah.
and you get total employees plus the payroll. So you I divide my payroll by the employees. I get average payroll per employee. Pretty cool little metric.
What was that called again?
CBS, County Business Survey. I don't know. Just do CBS. Type the zip code in, and hopefully, we're lucky. We're downtown Fort Worth, so our zip code perfectly fits. We got one. If your zip code bleeds, you might want to do kind of a weighted average, like what % of your zip code is within downtown XYZ.
How do you work? What is the relationship in working with the merchants and the businesses to find out how much sales came from an event you did in the area, or to be able to prove your ROI, to the storefront?
For us, it's just placers really at this point. Assessing major events that we host and then looking at the traffic to the surrounding businesses. But we haven't, since I've been there, we don't engage the business to ask for specific data. I mean, we might ask generally if they saw an uptick, but not, we haven't made the ask if, because I think some of them might provide it, but a lot of them probably wouldn't anyway, so. But the placer's been kind of the main resource for that kind of information for us.
Yeah, I think it's only been event specific, and it's, when I say event, maybe it's an event that we host and then we ask for something. Honestly, it's a pretty manual process at the moment. And then we purchase Visa data.
Yeah, it's anecdotal. We have a lot of chain luxury stores and department stores. They're not going to give you actual sales data, but they will give you anecdotal reports. We have something called Tulip Day in March, and it's partnered with the Dutch consulate, and they bring 100,000 tulips and they give them away in Union Square. And 35,000 people showed up for it last year. And so we went around and asked a few people how were things, and then people were thrilled, and they were like, our business doubled. Some people, so we get anecdotal reports like that, and we kind of take that down. It's not have data, but it's more like, hey, this is what we've heard, and so we then focus on trying to keep those events coming, and we'll try to do more things like that.
Josh, you want to go first to work our way up?
I was just curious, I'm not sure I caught it. All three of you, for your ambassador teams, are they in-house or are they contracted?
The Times Squares are in-house.
In-house for Dallas.
Contracted block by block, and Legion Security.
But block by, but then they're using the District360 app.
Yes.
So even though block by block is the workforce, all of their work is being captured in the District360 app and then conveyed into their database.
Yeah, we built it and
Yeah.
asked them, told them, whatever you want to today, to switch.
But just to have all that
And they
data.
were very willing to do so.
Yes, you were next and then you're next.
Space, and if you're tracking membership interactions and potentially people joining via CRM, I'm guessing it would be a different app that potentially would be Salesforce based that would be interacting.
Yeah, so Dallas, I think, is the only one that's membership based on this panel. And we're currently designing to bring their membership because they're using a separate platform. And this is a common theme with all of our customers, really, is like slowly over time you retire, we bring things together.
Yes.
It doesn't just happen overnight, right? You just start with what matters the most first, and then you start, like that's why we included the tech stack. It's just like, let's look at your landscape, let's talk about what is valuable to have together and what doesn't need to be together. Membership is very valuable, so they're about to do that. We work with a few different organizations who do have membership data in their CRM as well, and they are tracking engagements, interactions, they're tracking like membership levels. I think, Josh, you guys are doing that at Detroit, right? So there's just different modules that work for different types of downtown districts who have different strategic focus areas.
So do you guys actually like integrate with Stripe or some kind
Yeah.
of that you can actually
Yeah.
accept membership fees?
Yep. Yeah. And, you know, if you wanted it to go from your website, you know, they can fill out the membership form, put all of their information in, submit their payment, have that feed directly into your CRM. That's a model that we've done as well.
So it could do some of the same things as like chamber next or something like that?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of Salesforce. That's one of the reasons I thought it was a great platform to move to. It's adaptable. And then, of course, Community 4 came along, and I was like, oh, even better, specialized for bids.
Yeah.
So, you know, for us, then you can sort of build it the way you want it to be. And for us, everything's linchpinned on a parcel. So the stakeholder, the owner, the property manager, broker, tenants are all connected so that I can see that individual parcel who are the various contacts for. Which I didn't really find, not that I did a thorough, exhaustive search, but I didn't see any other platform that could really do that the way that we wanted it to. So that's what Salesforce was our choice. And you know, if you're a 501c3, you get 10 free licenses. That doesn't, you have to pay a consultant one way or the other to help you with it. But it's, you know, it's the first 10 licenses are free, which helps too.
Do you know if that applies to 501c6s also?
No. So where if I know this, and is anyone from Salesforce in here? So the bid is a 501c4, the Union Square Alliance, the Union Square Foundation is our 501c3 that we launched in 2017 that now holds the licenses.
And that's not unusual. A lot of your organizations have organizations under the umbrella, and we do see a lot of people leverage the C3 for technology, not just ours, but we get a lot of technology discounts. Yeah.
So my question is about the accessibility of your data. So do you get a lot of requests from external parties, meaning students, the city requesting the data? If yes, how frequent is it and how do you manage it?
Good question. Yes, everything you just said. I have our head of communications, I think, sends pedestrian council mayor's office every week or every day maybe. And I'd say so I don't have a number for how often, all I know it's a lot. It's a mix between press requests, so whether it's someone wanting to know how well or how bad Times Square is doing. Sometimes the data works in their favor, even though they still tell a terrible story. It's a board member, it's a broker who wants to show a potential tenant how central Times Square is. It could even be a property owner that has screens on their building and they want to know if there was an uptick in pedestrian counts based on a digital campaign that they had. So it's a lot. And what we do is we tag team as staff, whether it's me answering or, that's why it's really great to have that sort of command center, right? Because we have a fact sheet that we have someone update so that if there is a press request that is always urgent, but when someone from a newspaper calls, we can rely on that information.
And do you guys share that for free or do you guys charge for it?
If you're not, no.
Well, yeah, and we get, I think, we're required to submit reports every quarter to the city as part of our contract. And then we've just historically done it every month for our board. I think once we get a live dashboard up. We'll probably won't do every single month to the board. We'll probably just do the quarterlies to the city and the board, because the board will hopefully have access anytime they want to look at the data. But we don't charge. We're looking at potentially charging for some of the like economic development information that developers come to us for. That's probably going to happen, but most of the information about our field ops data, like if the media asks or city officials ask, we'll provide it. And it's definitely gotten I think the requests are increasing as it's become clear that we're an authority for downtown, and that's what we want. There was, to Regina's point, there was a press inquiry a couple weeks ago about how much piles of poop our people pick up, because the newspaper that's based downtown noticed there's a lot of it. And that wasn't great for the image downtown, but the editorial they wrote ended up being really good for our clean team, because it was basically about how our clean team shouldn't have to pick up thousands of piles of poop per year, and it called on the city to do like a public awareness campaign and maybe do enforcement of existing codes, existing laws to pick up after your pet. So, you know, we knew, I mean, to Regina's point, we knew it would be probably negative overall to downtown, but also positive to us and positive to hopefully motivating people to do a better job of cleaning up themselves.
Yeah, we don't charge for anything. We have our economic development metrics that I talked a little bit about. Those are on our website. We update them periodically. We're going to do like quarterly is what we're thinking. Those are there for anyone who wants to access them. Like I said, we try to tell a story from April 2020 forward. We pick and choose who we talk to, certainly the press. You know, every time a store closes or has closed in the last couple, last year in particular, it's like, they go, okay, give it, Old Navy's closing, what's your take? You know, and it's like, well, we're just for a big pass. There's nothing positive that we could spin that around. Spin that around is the opportunity. This is the once in a lifetime opportunity for a business to be in a union sport. Rates, you're never gonna get better rates. So, come now, or you'll regret it later. And with the annual report, that's on our website. We publish a mid-year report that's required in our contract every 6 months. So both of those are posted on our website for anyone to access. It's interesting, we don't get, to Scott's point, we don't get a lot of inquiries about that. You would think that they might, in that there's some startling metrics in there about biohazards and or amounts of trash picked up, or safety incidents addressed. So, but we rarely do get any questions about that data. Our ops reports are published too as well.
Yeah, mine was regarding Times Square. I was trying to look. It was kind of hard to see your different, information scrolling. But one of the metrics I think I saw that you tracked was illegal marijuana stores.
Oh, yeah.
So I was wondering how that got on the list, or what the story was behind that as like a tracking metric.
Well, let me tell you. All right, so cannabis is now legal in New York State, but they did a little bit of cart before the horse in terms of sale of cannabis. And we started to notice that once it was legal to have it on you, to recreationally use it, there were vacant storefronts that were being used as shops, as smoke shops. But there's actually only 5 licenses in Manhattan, but there's thousands of smoke shops. So in Times Square alone, we went from 2 last December to 13 now. That's just, there are other neighborhoods in New York City that have far more. And so when we started to see that, coupled with our stakeholders complaining that there was an increase in these stores, and that at least in Times Square, there have been 3 separate violent incidences that have happened outside of these stores, whether they're shootings or robberies. We needed that information to advocate on behalf of our neighborhood, to say to our city officials, we need to do something. We get that it's legal and we accept that, we have nothing against it, but if they're selling to minors and catering to minors, but also it leads to violent incidents outside of their stores or nearby, that does not add to the quality of life of Times Square and the surrounding area. So that's why
That's okay.
we have a weed map. Weed like enforcement.
What is the data connection or opportunity or like the data thing that you haven't quite figured out yet that you are beginning to work toward, and how are you beginning to chip away at that?
Well, I think it's what I said earlier. It's the what Salesforce is, probably originally made for. It's the interactions. So we're not doing as good a job as we could be of just logging our emails and our meetings and all the interactions. And that kind of feeds into the membership piece that, as Kate said, we're working toward building that in. I think we have a new membership director. Our last one, something against her, but she was really tied to Atlas and was comfortable there. And our new one is open to starting on a new platform. So I think once we get membership on there and we have like yet another department of the organization that is harping on how important it is for him to know all the interactions with existing and potential members, that'll give even more emphasis to it. I think that's the biggest thing, myself included. I don't log in every single day, and I think I like what Times Square is doing because they've built in the links and everything to draw people in there to give even more of a reason to log in. So that's I think the biggest challenge right now.
Yeah.
So we are a smaller team, and so in trying to gauge and gain all the insight from the numbers, I guess how much capacity does it take to report all the numbers and keep that up to date? This can be difficult to build into the small teams.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because before I was with District360, I was working at a district in the DC area, and I still cringe when I hear the word board meeting because it would take us hours and days, if not weeks, leading up to a single board meeting because we were pulling data from here and there and somewhere else, and then consolidating it, and we were doing it every quarter. And I know some people meet monthly. But I think that's where like my desire to help people streamline it comes from. And I think that these folks have, when we were preparing for this, I remember each of you saying, before, how was it? How many hours did it used to take to prepare for your reporting, and then what is it like today? I know, Scott, you had an opinion on that.
I mean, it's drastically reduced.
Yeah. And what about the rest of you? Is your reporting a little bit faster now?
Yeah, it's fast. I think I measure it in the amount of stretch I have. Yeah, that's so I could sleep before a board meeting. Yeah, and I just say start small, leverage who you're meeting here. Like, I'm happy to share my contact information. Use a case method, copy and steal everything. Like, see what other bids are producing, see if it matches up with the data goals that you have, and then ask them, like, how do you do it, And I'm always for free data if budget is an issue first.
Yeah, I'd echo that, is saying that, draw a roadmap, what you think is most important now, and, don't try to, take one foot for the other, you just have to start with what's most important. Like for us, it was like, we don't know how to contact people. And so it was like starting with that, and then it was next was the website and how we're gonna keep our directory up to date, and then from there it went to, District360 and reporting our ops leaders or property owners. It's just been a staged approach. I'd like to do more fundraising into Salesforce. We're doing it just sort of ad hoc one-offs for certain fundraising events that we have. But we're looking at really more robust sponsorship for some of our public realm activities in particular, and how to upsell those and working with consultants to help do that. And so building that in, again, it's what I can afford in a year, can't do everything I want to do. But we just try to tick things off. Right now, Captain said we have a security contractor that's on a completely different system, so the priority is now to get them into District360 this year. Get everybody, all the ops reports onto District360, so we're getting everything consistently done. So we can report out much easier than trying to pull from block by block and Legion and trying to make sense of these numbers. Do they make sense? We don't have any control over that data. I thought it was super important for us to bring the data in-house to be in control of it, since, you know, it's our money and we're spending it, and I wanna see what we're doing with it, and how it's being tracked, et cetera, so, you know, take a step, you just gotta take it step by step.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you brought that, having an outside contractor and yet bringing that into District360?
I didn't do that. So, you know, I was talking about the renewal of the organization, and, you know, when I would go to block by block, and they were using something called the SMART system, and they were, which, you know, I don't have anything against that system, other than I would say, hey, I need to know what I did at this hotel. I didn't know exactly what we did at this hotel. And they go, well, we can kind of figure it out by the deal. And I said, well, and if they move the line this much further, the stats massively change. And I'm like, okay, wait a second, what? You know, those numbers are way different. You know, something's up here. So I wasn't very confident. And so when we are in-house, I was, you know, block by block has been, you know, I'm not going to give an ad for block by block, but they've been a good partner of ours. They've been very, very willing to work with us. And we're, you know, an important contract for them for the West Coast, and that helps, obviously, with the leverage. But, you know, I was just like, hey, I'm gonna do this. We obviously have to pay for it. So we have to pay for the development of the tool. We had to pay for we paid monthly for the devices for them to use it. And, you know, that's what we incorporated into our budget, but they were willing to and train their staff, and that's a continuing process. Due to turnover and other things, but they were very willing to work with us, and my understanding is they're moving to partner with Q84, and they're building a similar system now. Do they recognize the value of what they can do and how they can help? And so that was the dream around with them.
Yeah.
So, kind of new at my role, you know, working with Texas, we call them PIDs.
Yep.
For downtown in the post-COVID environment, along with, everybody wants to know what's going on with the office space and visitors and residential, you know, and comparing that to the pre-COVID environment. But I think something that I tend to hear a lot in my line of work is, what is the value of downtown? And how can you estimate that value? So my question in general is, does anybody here see any benefit or utility of estimating commercial real estate in downtown, especially in the post-pandemic environment? I noticed I could go to the appraisal district and download appraisal data, but I think that only tells me how much I'm gonna get paid, not necessarily how much the land is worth. Downtown, we have a lot of underutilized land, open parking lots, and some dilapidated buildings. But I don't know, do we have any corporate finance grads here? What models do you use? Regression analysis, is there any benefit to trying to estimate commercial real estate value in downtown and maybe making that in some way publicly available? Not just as an aggregate, but even at the block level, the parcel level.
I would say it depends on who's asking the question and how your tax structure is. So if your city government, for example, ours is relying on income tax, and so the number of jobs is more important than anything. Whereas another city, it might be the property tax, and so that value is more important than anything. So statistics, we always pull out our, you know, we represent less than 1% of the land area of the city or the county, but make up 30 or more percent or whatever it is of the sales tax or the income tax or the property tax, depending on what's most important.
I'm just noticing that what the government assesses the value of land would be not necessarily what the market believes it to be. So, you know, to try to find the value of commercial real estate seems really hard.
In California, yeah, it is. And so in California, they appraise it when it's transacted over. So they can do a proper team, which increases the value of the property over time with that, and then maybe has a smaller incremental increase the tax problem. But that being said, to your point, the appraisal value has nothing to do with the actual market value. Now, would we get into that? Probably not, because I don't, you know, even we sort of broker committee in the last year or so just to talk to our brokers about what they're saying, try to get everyone on the same page about how we're going to talk about Union Square and what's going on in there, to get feedback from them. And even with that, we were like, should we give values of like what, you know, rents are, or, you know, and they were like, absolutely not. Do not put anything about rates on it, because if you go to one block, it's one thing. If you go to the next block, it's completely different. The value too of properties. So we've had properties change hands in Union Square for what I would consider a big profit. Even during the pandemic, they changed hands for what I would a profit over what they were last purchased for, say 2015, 2016. Like Chanel bought a building on Union Square, and they paid a premium for themselves to operate their business on Union Square. They saw that as a benefit to them versus paying a lease where they're at now. Others that are empty, trading hands at maybe 35–40% of what they sold for in 2016 on the low end of the scale, and you have everything in between. So I think it's really tough to say if you buy a building and you've got a tenant with a 20-year lease and it was set in 2014, you're probably, that building's going to be worth a premium. If you don't have a tenant and it's empty, you're going to sell it at a substantial loss over what it was in 2016.
Okay, thank you.
So it's just tough, and I don't want some property to scream at me. Because I told somebody, or we told somebody that the value was this, and they're not gonna pay any more.
So we're at time. Thank you three so much. Thank you all for joining us. And we're gonna have, 2 weeks from now, we're gonna have a virtual roundtable to have any other follow-up questions that you want. I thought there was a QR code here, so you could just add it to the calendar, but I'm not seeing it. So there is one at our booth. Also, if you want free professional headshot, come by our booth.